Welcome, everybody. See, there's a handful of you here. Welcome. I just wanted to say hi and double check that everything is working good. I see Alan here. Welcome, Paul, Tyler, Falls. Welcome, everybody. Really, really happy to have you guys here. Drop a comment in the chat. Let me know if this is coming through clear. It's a new system that I have here. Antonio, welcome here. Today, I'm super excited. This is workshop number 2 that I've done in the group. And let me switch this screen here. Okay, this is workshop number 2. And I really, really enjoyed the first one. The feedback was very, very encouraging. And so today I hope to share with you the most important things that you need to know to truly overcome this for good. Alan, you said that in the comments here. How do we get over this for once and for all? Today, that's exactly what my goal is. Just literally give you as much as I possibly can so you can end this problem, go on with living your life. And I've heard people tell me when they reach out for help, they say, I just want to feel normal. I know what they mean, whatever normal is. I know what they mean, though, when they say, just I don't have to worry about this anymore. I don't want to have to think about this and always wonder if this is in the back of my mind and is this going to creep up on me? People don't want to have to deal with that. And so that's my goal. Just drop a comment in the chat. Let me know if I'm coming through loud and clear, if the sound is good, if it's good. And if so, I will jump right in. And I'm excited to share with you some things today that my hope, again, is that it's going to be really, really helpful. Tyler, is there going to be a replay of this later? Yes, there will. I'm going to post this in the group, so everybody will have access to it there if you have to check out a little bit early. So, okay, there's one thing that I want to do before we start. Oh, yeah, the thing that I wanted to mention is, so this workshop will go, okay, Gavin, what's up? You and your wife here together. Super happy to have you both here. So how this is going to go is I'm going to share with you the material for the workshop. And then if you have questions, drop them in the chat. This is the benefit of doing this live, is that you can have your questions answered in real time. There's going to be a section at the very end as well. So depending on what the question is, I may wait to just address it at the very end, or we can touch on it if it's specific to some of the stuff that we're talking about on a particular slide. But please don't hesitate to ask any questions that you have. I want to make sure this is applicable to you. And if there's some specific things that you're wondering about how to apply this to you, what does this look like for your situation, I'd love to help. So drop a question in the chat if something comes up, or be thinking about what you want to ask at the very end, and we will be sure to address that. Okay, I want to welcome everybody here to the Freedom from Pornography workshop. It's the how to identify and resolve the root cause. The purpose of this workshop is to give you everything that you need to completely eliminate the reason why this problem has existed in your life for as long as it has. Some people struggle with this for a few years. Some people struggle with this for 10 years. Some people literally struggle with this for a few decades. So if you're one of those people, I want you to find freedom from this. And today my goal is to show you exactly how to do that in a way that doesn't require willpower and discipline and fighting through urges and gritting through and just trying harder. There's a way better way to do this. So this is going to be our target for today. I want to share with you just a couple of, so when I work with people directly, so I'll do these workshops and I'm in the group answering questions. When I work with people directly, I have a 12-week program, and it's condensed and targeted to just 12 weeks to help somebody walk them from start to finish, to identify what the root cause is, because a lot of people aren't sure what it is. And sometimes if they do know what it is, they don't know how to work through it. So that's the goal of the program when I work with somebody directly. I want to just share with you that this process works. I am convinced beyond a shadow of a doubt, case study after case study, that this is not something you have to deal with for the rest of your life. I just wanted to share with you a brief couple little bits here of people. I got this text message just a few weeks ago. I had an initial session. The goal of like I said, the 12 weeks is to help you eliminate this problem and the core of it, and for it to never come back. And this particular person had been struggling with this for over a decade. And so the first session in the 12 weeks is what I call a breakthrough session, designed to help you, like I said, identify and then actually turn a corner and have a breakthrough around what the root cause is. So I'll just read briefly the second paragraph here. He said, I cannot thank you enough. I'm truly dumbfounded how one conversation could have such a big impact. I feel like a completely different person. It feels like a weight has been lifted off my shoulders, and I have so much peace and joy. So it's truly phenomenal to see people change as quickly as they do when you address the root cause. If you don't, you struggle for a long, long time. Second here, this next person said, Sam, I've been sober for over 75 days, and this sobriety has been different from the previous ones. Grateful for your help and for the program. It's different because he's approaching it on a different level. And lastly, let me move my little guy there. Again, after the initial call, thank you for the support work we did on the second. These last 4 days, I've felt like a weight has been removed, and I don't even have temptations nor triggers that I so easily gave into. I'm so much more focused. I just share all of this to say that this process works. I want you to have hope, because if you have hope and then plug yourself into the right system, this problem can literally disappear, and it doesn't have to follow you around for the rest of your life. Okay, with that being said, let's jump in. Okay, I just covered that. There is so many tools that you can use to overcome this issue. So let's do this. Overview for today. We're going to be talking about why you haven't been able to stop. I presume that anybody who's watching this video has been trying to stop this for a long time. And you're finally reaching out for some help, because if you hit a wall and you're not sure what to do, you don't know how to overcome this, then it feels overwhelming. Then it feels hopeless and discouraging. So I want to tell you some of the main reasons that I've seen when I work with people. For the last 14 years, I've probably done over 15,000 therapy sessions. This is all I do. And there are common threads throughout anybody's story. So I want to share with you some of the most common reasons why you haven't been able to stop. Number two, I want to help you know how to overcome your urges. The goal of when I work with somebody isn't to just help them stop watching pornography. It's to help them eliminate their urges so that this isn't a distraction for them. Yes, you can live without porn, but can you feel free? Do you feel relaxed? Are you hypervigilant all the time? When you overcome the urges, you can actually feel like you're just doing your day, and it's not something lurking around the corner. I want to share with you specifically 5 tools that can help you quit pornography. I want to help you walk through a process of how to resolve your shame, because I know a lot of people carry this feeling of shame and guilt. And lastly, how all this ties together to foster trust with your wife and ultimately rebuild your relationship. To start this off, it's so important to recognize that everything depends on how you define the problem. All of the strategies and tools that you implement, all of the efforts that you put into place, all literally hinge on how you define the problem at the very onset. I wrote down a little example of car trouble. I know nothing about cars. And if the little check engine light comes on my dashboard, sometimes like I'm the person who would like to put a piece of duct tape over the little check engine light and just pretend it's not there, because I don't know what to do with that. And now with the car that I have, usually when that comes on, it just means an oil change. So I don't have to do that anymore because I know what to do. If you don't know why you're struggling with this issue, so let's actually stay with the car analogy. If the check engine light comes on and you don't know why it's there, you don't know what the problem is. It could be an oil change. What if it indicates that there's something wrong with the motor or the engine? What if it indicates there's a problem with the wiring, an electrical failure? It could be anything. It could be anything. This is no different. When somebody struggles with pornography, if you don't know why that's happening, it's like throwing spaghetti at the wall and hoping that something will stick if you try different tools and strategies. It's like me seeing the check engine light and going under the hood and just tightening the wrench, using the wrench to tighten a few bolts and hoping that does the job, or just putting gas in the car thinking, well, maybe it's a gas issue. If you don't know what it is, it's critical to figure that out, because the solutions are tailored to why you are struggling with the problem in the first place. So there's 2 different ways to approach this. I'm on this mission to help people understand that there are different ways to navigate this problem, and how each approach defines the problem makes all the difference. So in the traditional approach, this is oftentimes just the old school way of thinking about this. Some people, there are some elements of this in 12-step programs. There's some elements in this in just old school therapists and books and podcasts. And these are some of the principles of this old traditional way of looking at this. They define this as a problem of you. Once an addict, always an addict. You have this deficiency. This struggle is something that you will never get rid of. you have these urges and cravings that you have to just learn how to manage because this is just who you are. As a result of this being just who you are, you need guardrails. You need ways to manage and deal with your triggers, filters, avoid triggering places, having accountability partners that you can check in on to report to them that you haven't messed up or you did mess up. It's guardrails to prevent you from flying off the cliff, and you must stay hypervigilant and anxious because this is just your struggle. Now, I could not disagree more with this approach. I've just seen so many people come through this program that I work with, and as I've worked with in therapy for years, this hasn't helped very many people. Do some people have success? Yes, of course, right? You can some people find a way to make this work? Sure. But I have not seen this work very well for most people. The other way that I like to look at this is the root cause approach. When you see it, somebody struggling with pornography use as a result of an underlying root cause that has not been addressed, you recognize that it's not who you are, it's just a strategy that you use. Pornography use is a strategy or a coping mechanism to help you deal with negative emotion. It's a way to escape. It's not who you are. It's just how you've learned how to navigate how you feel. It's a response to pain. Number two, when you approach things by addressing the root cause, your urges and cravings can absolutely and literally disappear. They're not things that you have to manage forever because urges and cravings are the symptom of a deeper underlying cause that hasn't been addressed. When you approach the root cause, you can just feel normal. This is what I said in the very beginning. A lot of guys tell me, I just want to feel normal. And what I take from that is they don't want to have to worry about this all the time and constantly be on guard thinking this is going to just take me over and it's going to torpedo my progress and my relationship. I just want to feel normal and not have to worry about this. And lastly, when you address the root cause, you can actually feel confidence. You can feel peace. You can experience a sense of freedom from the issue instead of just management. So, like I mentioned, let me share with you, I share different analogies and ways of trying to communicate these principles that I want to share. Smoke is the symptom of the fire. Smoke is not the problem. So if you're in a house and one of the rooms has smoke coming out from underneath the crack below the door, the smoke indicates that there's a fire, which is the problem. In the very same way, urges are a symptom of an underlying root cause. And the root cause isn't you. It's not that you're this bad person who has no discipline and who just, if tried harder, you'd be able to overcome this. That's not where this problem comes from. And most people look at it through that lens, which is why they feel so discouraged. Holding your breath does not work if you're in a smoky room. Trying to suppress your urges just causes them to increase. Trying to navigate through urges by suppressing and avoiding and containing and managing does not work. So, traditional approach, they say that this is the root cause. It's just who you are. You lack discipline and willpower, and you're weak. You're just not trying hard enough. Therefore, like I said earlier, it all depends on how you define the problem. So if this is the problem and it's you, then their solution is that you have to manage urges, be on guard, increase your discipline and willpower, and just try harder. This is the loop that most men find themselves in. Drop a comment in the chat if this has been you. I just need to try harder. I don't have enough discipline. I just need to focus on really committing to this. There's something wrong with me. Why do I keep failing? Well, it's because I'm not doing enough. It's this loop that guys get stuck in because they don't know what else to do. They have to just manage this. The traditional approach, I think, so this person here, Bill Watson, is a co-founder of AA. And a lot of these principles are in that program. Two notes to this. I'm not criticizing AA in any way. It's just how they view the problem that doesn't align with how I've seen things really, really work. So AA was created back in 1935 by the man here on the screen, Bill Watson. He struggled with alcohol for his entire life, and he started AA as a way to help get a community of people together so they can work through this problem as a community. And I love that intention. I love the principle of community. I think it's so powerful to know that you're not alone in this. So he established this, his very best efforts to try to help other people, and developed 12 step. I think it's an amazing effort. The difficulty is that Bill Watson in 1935 didn't know about addiction like we do now. He didn't have access to brain scans. He didn't have access to neurologists and neuroscientists who can tell us what's actually going on in the brain, because they didn't have the same equipment that we do. So he devoted his life to service, which, again, respect to this person. No criticism whatsoever. He lived 36 years sober. The thing that I want to highlight in his story is that even on his deathbed, he was craving whiskey. He was struggling, and he kept asking the nurse to give him alcohol because of how much pain he was in. This is a legendary effort, in my opinion, to struggle with cravings and be 36 years sober. Legitimately, hats off to this person. Such a difficult task. Very, very difficult to approach it in this way, yet he made his focus, I got to stay alcohol free. I've got to figure out any way to make that happen. And he did it. I respect that. What I am suggesting today is there is an easier way. You don't have to grit through cravings. This traditional approach doesn't help you eliminate cravings. It helps you manage them. And Bill Watson did a phenomenal job managing those cravings to go 36 years without giving in. I respect that. My hope today is that you walk away with knowing there's a way easier way to approach this. The traditional approach does not offer freedom. It's just guardrails. In order to find freedom, you must lose the desire for pornography, and you cannot deprive yourself into losing a desire for something. It just doesn't work like that. In order to find freedom, you must change from the inside out by resolving the root cause. There's a couple little case studies that I wanted to share. Like I mentioned, I've got a 12-week process, and after about the 7th or 8th week, Chad is one of the guys that I was working with. This has been a while now, and he told me after about the 7th or 8th week, he started feeling within himself, after he wasn't slipping up anymore. He was just like, I don't really celebrate this anymore. This doesn't feel like some huge accomplishment for me. And I asked him, well, what do you mean? And describe that a little bit more. He said that this is just how it is now. It's not some huge victory that I'm not going back to pornography, because it's not a part of my life. So for me to celebrate every single day that I don't do it doesn't feel right, because this is just not me. And I've gotten beyond this, and I'm not feeling pulled. And this is just day-to-day life now, which is exactly what we're going for you to just be. And it's not something that you have to keep track of forever, because you're just hoping to keep it at bay. It's just how you operate. John, for instance, he about halfway through the program, I send out these little messages. So I've got these 12 weeks, and everything is broken up into specific things to do, so that when you join, here's the blueprint. You don't have to guess. You don't have to wonder. It's literally follow these steps, and you will navigate your way through this, and I'll help you every step of the way. So I send out these little text messages like every other day. Day 1, watch this 9-minute video. Day 3, do this little exercise. Day 7, have this talk with your wife. Everything is laid out. He told me about halfway through the program, he's like, I don't even think about this problem anymore until I get a text message from you. And I kind of chuckled at that and thought, that's what we want to have happen, is for you to not to have to think about this anymore. He finished the program, and he's in a totally different place. All of this is to say, this can be you too. You don't have to battle with this anymore. And if you've been approaching it from the traditional way, I want to reassure you that there's a different way to do that. So what does that way look like? When I define it, the new approach, working through the root cause, is the new approach. What I believe is the root cause is it's a strategy for coping. It's not who you are. Then what happens is, as you're exposed to pornography and you start to have this chemical, this dopamine release, this adrenaline, all these feel-good endorphins that get released in your body, When as you're growing up, you're exposed to that. There's a pull that starts to develop. It develops into a habit. And then if that's your outlet to deal with stress or loneliness, or if your parents maybe you don't feel very comfortable or safe with them, or you're left out at school and you're not in the in crowd, or you just feel like a bad kid or a bad person, you don't really have a lot of friends, or it could be anything, any uncomfortable or negative emotion from any situation. If this strategy starts to become how you deal with that and it's a distraction for you, it develops into a habit. And then over time, through repetition, subconscious links are formed so that you don't even have to think about it anymore. In fact, I remember about 8 or 9 years ago, I used to work for a clinic. And when clients came in, they checked in at the front desk, and there was this big glass jar of Andes mints. And my office was the first one by the door. So when they would come in, I would hear the jar rattle. Clients would get the candy. They'd sit in the lobby. I'd go get them. After, I don't know, just even a few weeks of that, I would hear that jar rattle. And then I would think, man, I kind of want to get an Andes mint too, because there was an association that was formed. That sound, kind of like Pavlov's dogs, if you've heard of that. I touch on that in just a little bit. But there is a situation or a feeling that gets linked with a behavior. Are you guys with me? When those two things get paired together, the brain fires those off automatically. So when I heard the sound, I didn't have to consciously think about, I wonder what that is. And maybe I should go check it out. Oh, I think it's an Andes mint. I think I want to go grab one. It was automatic, right? Hear the sound. It's this, oh, I kind of want an Andes mint right now, because those get linked together. And then urges, so with regard to pornography, urges for pornography then get associated with the triggers. It could be I'm home alone. It could be I had a bad day and I'm stressed, or I'm at my office, or I'm doing whatever. I feel overwhelmed. I feel discouraged and lonely. I feel depressed. When that link gets paired with pornography use because of repetition, because it's been a strategy to cope with your pain, that's how this thing starts to develop. And then the grooves in the neural pathways get deeper and deeper, so that it doesn't take much, and it's just subconsciously operating without even your awareness. I think about it like driving a car. Most of you probably don't have to think about how to, go from park to drive, and when to push on the gas, and then when to slow down when you're approaching a red light. You don't even think about that anymore because it's so wired in. This is what happens when it comes to a pattern with pornography use. So what is the root cause? I mentioned here, it's a strategy. It's there to deal with these underlying feelings. Pornography use, lying, dishonesty, masturbation, messaging other people, getting attention from other women, whatever the surface behavior is, that's just the tip of the iceberg. The root cause is everything underneath it. It could range from depression, low self-worth, shame, stress, fear, anxiety, insecurities, feelings of not being good enough. These are the underlying feelings that lead somebody to watch pornography. Now, usually it's not so like, had a fight with my wife, 10 minutes later I'm watching something, or I'm stressed at work and I fell behind a deadline, then 30 seconds later I'm going to look something up. It's usually not so instantaneous like that. But how this works is these feelings start to just stew. It's like a pressure cooker. And this feeling of low self-worth, and then I'm hard on myself. I get into a fight with my wife and I'm not really happy about the status of our relationship. I feel this remorse and guilt because she's in pain. No matter what I do, it's never enough. And then this starts to build. And because that pain has been subconsciously associated with pornography use, that's when your body sends the signal in the form of an urge for you to go and search for something. This is like Pavlov's dog, where he rings the bell, gives the dog food, the dog salivates. There's nothing inherent about a bell that causes a dog to salivate. It's only through conditioning. Just like how the tinkling of the jar, that doesn't mean anything. But because for me, it was paired with an Andes mint, I started to feel this craving for a mint. This is no different. When you experience these underlying feelings, It leads to these urges because that's how the brain has paired those together. Drop a comment in the chat and let me know if this makes sense. This is critical for people to understand this if you want to find freedom, because once you can recognize for you, I'm just sharing with you a couple of examples or ideas of what this could be for you. Once you've identified what it is, then you can actually take steps towards resolving it and eliminating it from your life and breaking the links. That's the most important part. You're breaking the links from trigger that's connected to urge. Because, of course, we're going to have bad days. Of course, we're going to feel anxious sometimes. That doesn't mean there's anything wrong with us. This world is insane. We're going to feel bad. We're going to feel left out sometimes. We're going to feel stressed. There's no escaping that. But the good news is that we don't actually have to. We don't need to live in a bubble to be free from this. All we need to do is break the links that have been subconsciously associated. And when you do that, you can have the worst day of your life, but it won't be connected to now I have to go and watch something to deal with how bad I feel. You can have an awful day and feel like I'm okay. This isn't even, just like the couple of clients that I mentioned, they're not even thinking about pornography anymore because the links are broken. And when that happens, you can experience all of these things and there will be a sense of freedom because the links have been broken. Okay, I'm glad this is resonating. A few of you are chatting this in. Okay, great. Now, let's get to the tools. The first part of it is the setup, and it's so important to recognize it and to see it in that way because, number one, it opens up the door to approach this differently than you maybe have in the past. Because if you've been struggling with this for a long time, I would guess that it's been because of the traditional approach, trying harder, more discipline, more effort, and avoidance. So for this way, there are so many good tools that you guys can implement to end this behavior. This is the framework. So as I mentioned in the beginning, when I work with people directly, I want to share with you exactly what I walk them through. And then this is how you can start to apply these principles. So when I walk through this process, when I work with somebody, this is what I'm paying attention to. Is the root cause on one of these three levels, one or more of these three levels? Is the root cause on the belief level, which is the basement level, the core level? And this is the one where we have so much leverage. So if there's a belief level core problem, such as a belief about myself of being, I'm a failure, I'm unworthy, I'm not good enough, I'm unlovable, I'm bad. It's some I am statement with a negative belief connected to it. This is one of the reasons, as a sidebar, why I really, really discourage my clients from calling themselves addicts. You're identifying and defining yourself as a problem or with the problem. It's not who you are. It's a strategy that you've been using. It's not who you are. And so when guys come into the program and they tell me, I see myself, I'm an addict. I've been an addict for a blah, blah, blah amount of time. I really start to help them reframe that, because what happens is subconsciously when there's a struggle, and if they do get hit with an urge as they're working through this process, as they're still unlinking things, eventually they think to themselves, well, because I'm an addict, I'm eventually going to fall. So I might as well just get this out of the way. And they go and watch something because in their mind, it's inevitable. I'm an addict. It's the limiting belief that keeps them stuck. So on this level, that's what I'm paying attention to, is how do you see yourself? If you've gone through really difficult things when you were younger, typically those things create negative beliefs about who we are. That is the core of so many people's struggles. Low self-esteem because they see themselves as a failure. The next level above that is emotion. It's I'm lonely, I'm scared, I'm sad, I'm overwhelmed, I'm anxious, I'm fearful. These things here, negative emotions, again, like I said, often contribute to somebody wanting to get away from those. And if pornography has been the way historically that you've dealt with these negative feelings, that's why this pattern has developed, and then it takes on a life of its own. And even just knowing, okay, I know it's almost like so many women that I work with, they'll say, well, why doesn't he just stop? Why doesn't he just quit doing this? If he really cared about me, then he wouldn't be doing this. And I can tell you, no husband that I've ever worked with has told me, I watch pornography because I don't really care about my wife. I watch pornography because I just don't really love her enough. I have literally never one time heard that. Women in the very beginning have a hard time reconciling, well, this pornography use doesn't reflect, like, that's not love. So if he loved me, he wouldn't do that. As I've shared with you today, it's much more nuanced than that. It's exposure, endorphins get released, patterns start to develop. This becomes the way that you learn how to cope with how you feel. And if you do that pattern on repeat, however many times over however many years, it's as if I have this image in my head of two little kids in this big wheat field or like sagebrush field. And they light this little sagebrush and they're like, oh, this is crazy. It's burning. And then it starts to grow. And then at some point, it gets beyond their ability to deal with by themselves. And so this fire starts to spread and it becomes this massive problem that they cannot put out by themselves. This is why, so I wanted to share that to help you see that these are the things that contribute to this problem growing beyond your control. So we just need to now address it in the proper way so you can get the tools that you need to resolve this issue. So this being one of them, it's on a belief level is the root issue, or an emotional level, or on the highest level, it's a habit. It develops into a habit. And through associations of where you are, at what point during the day, what's going on, it's just, it's pattern, it's routine, it's habit, it's those associations are the last element that contribute to where this comes from for people. Now, knowing all of this, actually, let me add one more note here. Knowing on what level this problem exists for you is vital, because if you try to apply a tool to help you change your habits, let's say the problem for you is on the belief level and you carry around a lot of shame and a lot of self-doubt and you don't feel good about who you are and there's not much confidence. You beat yourself up. There's all this pain and it's on the belief level. If you apply a strategy that's on the habit level and just tell yourself, okay, I'm going to, because if I find myself watching pornography right before I go to bed because I charge my phone on the nightstand and it's just right there, it's too accessible, then okay, the solution is I'm going to just charge that downstairs or in the bathroom. If the problem is that you don't see yourself if you see yourself as a bad person, you charging your phone in the bathroom does not change that belief about who you are. Again, it's like the car analogy. The check engine light comes on and you think, oh, this must mean I need an oil change. But if you need an engine, if there's a problem with one of your pistons, or if there's a problem with the wiring in your car, it doesn't matter how many times you change your oil, it's not going to work. This is why guys get so discouraged. They legitimately are trying. And if this is you, I feel for you. If you genuinely care and you want this problem out of your life and you've been doing everything you possibly can, it's probably because of this. There's a problem on one of these levels and the tool that you're using doesn't address the level. It's a mismatch. Habit level solutions will not address belief level problems. So finding out where you are on this helps you to know what you can do about it. Again, let me know in the chat, does this resonate with you? And I want to give you some ideas as we keep going forward to help you know. I'm going to share with you these tools right now. Well, what do you do? What do you do to not only identify these things, but how can we start to work with these things? So let me just say one more note about identification. This is the framework. This is how you do it. A lot of guys think, well, I don't know what the root cause is. This is the framework that I would encourage you to look through. This is the lens. So once you learn how to diagnose because you understand what you're looking for, that's how you figure out the root cause. It's just reflection on these three elements. It doesn't have to be super complicated. It's just, these are the three elements. So I would encourage you, as we think about this today, as you're here, think about, okay, which one resonates for me? Am I really hard on myself? Do I have all these negative beliefs about myself? Do I struggle with these emotions that I don't know how to deal with? Or is it habit? Or is it all of them or a couple of them? But this is how you identify the root cause. It's reflection through this lens that you look, it's through this like framework that you're looking to find which one of these resonate. And it can be different ones at different times. So the goal is to just find all of them. And it's usually not a million things. It's usually just a core few. It's just different times, different things might show up. And the work that I like to do with people, and that I'm going to share with you right now, is what tools do I use for each one? Because let's say one day myself, my critic comes out and I'm so hard on myself. And it's a reflection that you have this negative belief. How do I deal with that? That's what we're going to get into right now, is what tools to use for each of these levels. So the root cause, here's an example of what that looks like. Beliefs. I guess this is another way of looking at that same slide previously. Beliefs, I'm a failure. Feelings, sadness. Habits, what are the triggers that go with that? So if we were to start on the basement level where there is the most leverage, this is, by the way, when I'm working with people, it's this and the emotional level that cause the breakthroughs. When you are looking at the messages from these other people, that's why in like a single session, when we can pinpoint what specific belief or feeling is causing you the most problem, and you walk through an exercise to break the belief, it's like, I've heard people say it's going from living in black and white to color. It's like this moment where there was a shift, and there's a breakthrough literally in these beliefs, which is why this weight can be lifted from you. It's like going to the chiropractor. If you nail the right tool with the right problem, it's like a chiropractor where your back gets adjusted and there's instant relief. If you've never gone to a chiropractor, I had some back issues playing basketball. I tweaked it. My friend kept saying, go see the chiropractor. This they'll help you. And I'm thinking, how can that help? I don't know. When I went to the chiropractor and he did an adjustment on me, it was like instantaneous relief because he targeted the problem and it opened things up for me. This is no different. So tool number one, and I'll share with you an example of what this looks like. If the belief, let's say, is I'm not good enough. I shared with you a couple of different situations when this might manifest. If your wife gets angry at you, you might have this belief, I'm not enough. I don't do enough. I'll never be enough. She's not happy because I keep failing. Or if you turn back to pornography, you think you're doing well and you feel like you're doing well, and then you get triggered and then you slide right back to where you used to be. And then you think, how could I have done this again? I feel awful. I went right back to it. That's because I'm not enough. And I'll never be able to overcome this. I'm not enough. Or if you make a mistake at work, it could be anything. Let's say, for example, you're late on a deadline and your boss is upset with you. And you think to yourself, yep, here it is again. I'm just a screw up and I'll never be enough. So what's the tool? That's what I wrote down here in the blue or the teal or that color. This is, I think, a made up word, but this is how I refer to it. I call it depersonalizing. So when somebody has a belief of not being good enough, they make the situation about them in a way that's not accurate. So here's the example that I like to share with people. When Kobe Bryant joined the NBA, he came straight out of high school. And I remember watching an interview that he gave and said that when he first joined the NBA, he would shoot air balls. And as he thought about it, he's like, why am I shooting these air balls? There's one of two ways to look at this. If you have this shame-based belief about yourself and you make the situation about you and it is slanted in a negative way, you're going to think, so if I was Kobe Bryant, let's say, I shoot an air ball. If I have this negative belief and a shame, I will think to myself, I'm not enough. I'm an imposter. I don't belong here. I'm not ever going to make it here. I'm a failure. It's going to fall back on him on some level. And as a result of that, guess what'll happen? He's going to shoot less. And when he does shoot, he'll be way more nervous, which makes the ball less likely to go in. And then as a result of that, he'll probably get less playing time, which will reinforce his negative belief. Yep, see, my coach is pulling me off the court. I don't measure up. I don't belong here. And then ultimately, shame leads to isolating, withdrawing, and that's when people cope. And if, again, for you guys who are here on the workshop, if it's historically been through pornography use, that's when this will happen. For other people, it's food. For other people, it's drugs or alcohol or Facebook, or there's so many different ways that we cope, but this is how that happens. So Kobe Bryant in the interview did not do that. He didn't make it personal, which was brilliant on his side. And I don't know if that's something he worked on or if that's just something that he kind of defaulted to. Most people, it requires work. For me, I used to carry around this same belief of being bad. It's just not enough. I make a mistake, I'm bad. I'm not doing a good enough job. I'm a failure. I used to have that same belief. And Kobe Bryant didn't say that in the interview. He said, okay, I shoot an air ball. Then I started to get to work thinking, how did this happen? And as he reflected, he said that in the NBA, you're playing about 3 or 4 games a week. In high school, you're only playing 1. And so he said, these air ball shots are just because I'm tired. I'm having to work way harder the very next year out of high school than I was in high school. My endurance isn't what it needs to be. So instead of making the situation about him, I shot an air ball, I'm bad, I suck. It's, I shot an air ball. What about this situation can I address? My endurance. Okay. In order for me then to increase my endurance, I need to focus on training. It's treadmill, it's running, it's exercise, it's increasing my endurance through exertion. And he did, and he was successful. This same principle applies to you in any of these situations. If your wife gets, so how does this look, right? So depersonalizing, meaning you take it away from you. It's not about you in a good way. It's not about who you are. It's about maybe a lack of a skill that you have. It's maybe a decision that you made or an approach that you used to deal with the situation. It doesn't have anything to do with this. A mistake or any of these things don't define who you are. That's where people start to feel shame. They make it about them in a mistaken way. It's a misunderstanding. So how do we apply this to these situations here? Let's say your wife gets angry at you and she's not happy with it. It could be anything. Let's say she's not happy with how you handled discipline with the kids, or she's not happy that that there's still not trust in the relationship and she doesn't believe what you're saying. She's not happy because she's still hurt by the pornography use. And as a result, she's angry. If you see this as a reflection of you, you're going to feel awful and withdraw. But here's how you can see this in that situation. Let's say you handled the discipline and you were too heavy-handed. You got angry, you yelled, and there was no repair afterwards. So instead of thinking, I'm a bad dad, I'm just never good enough, I keep screwing up in every area of my life, instead, make it about the situation. What happened? Okay, I lost my temper. Does that mean you're a bad person? No. So where did that come from? What about the situation maybe contributed to that? Well, maybe you slept 4 hours the night before. Maybe you didn't know how to handle that situation and you've asked your kid 50 times to not jump on the couch. And so you reach your limit and you snap. Because what if they needed a different approach? What if you just didn't know how to approach that specific situation with your kid? So you kept asking them and then you hit the wall and then it's like, I don't know what to do. Maybe it's a skills thing. Maybe it's knowing how to, if again, going back to sleep, let's say you're running on fumes or you're stressed at work. What was it that contributed to that thing? Once you identify that then becomes the solution. Maybe I need new skills maybe I need to know this child needs a different approach than this other child. I don't really know what to do. So who might know the answer to that? What book, what podcast, what YouTube video can I seek to get some feedback to know how I can change my approach? Because it's not me as a person that's bad. I might just need new skills and I can learn those. Same thing with pornography use. If you turn back to pornography and you beat yourself up thinking, I'll never do this, I'll never do this right, I keep screwing this up. What if all you needed to do was identify on what level the problem exists? And because you haven't done that yet, you don't know what to do. You don't know how to solve the problem. So it's just a skills issue. You turn back to pornography, that doesn't mean you're a bad person. It just probably means you need a new approach. Then you can get to work figuring out what that approach is to then make the changes. And now you approach, then you address the situation again. It's just tools. Lastly, if you make a mistake at work, let's say you fall behind on a deadline, and as you reflect on it, it doesn't mean you're an awful employee and you're bad and you're not enough. What if it just means that you procrastinated because you didn't know how to do something involved that was involved with the project? So if that's all it was like I just delayed because I didn't know what to do, then it's just what skill do I need to learn to address this problem next time I face it? My hope as I'm describing these things is that you're getting ideas for how you can apply this principle. It's taking you or your worth out of the equation. Yes, if you watch pornography, that is your decision, of course. Sometimes people misunderstand this. Yes, it's your decision, but that doesn't define who you are. Your decision was a result of something, a lack of skills, a lack of clarity about why it happened. It could be a lack of having a good habit in place. The goal is to figure that out, to take your worth out of the equation so you can just get to work and refine. And it's a process of refining, right? Figure out this is the problem. Okay, here's my tool I'm going to solve it with. Then you test it. And then, hey, that worked, but this part needs to be tweaked. Okay, then what's the tool for that? It's this. All right, now test it to the point where it resolves and the problem is ultimately dealt with. So taking yourself out of the equation is how you can break through shame and at the very same time address the core issue that might be leading to the pornography use in the first place. Let me know if you have any questions on that. That's a really important one. Drop it in the chat if you do. All right, next one. Oh, I guess here's another tool. It's I'll just talk briefly about this. Self-compassion. It's the opposite of what we do when we're in shame. Shame, we're hard on ourselves. We beat ourselves up. We are our own worst critics in most cases. Self-compassion is a different way to speak to yourself. Self-compassion is not self-permission. Self-compassion is you talking to yourself in the same way that you would talk to a good friend. You would not say, hey, man, if you watch pornography and your wife has heard about it, it's not that big of a deal. It's okay. You're still a good person. You probably wouldn't say that. You'd probably say something like, hey, this is a problem. That decision hurts your wife, and you can take accountability for that. Let's just get you the right tools. This doesn't mean you're a bad person. A lot of people struggle with this. And so it's not an excuse to keep doing it. We've got to solve this problem. So recognize that you're not a terrible person for it. We just need to get you the right tools and help you figure out why this is happening so you can end the behavior, because self-compassion goes hand in hand with responsibility and accountability. It's just how you talk to yourself. Have you ever heard the phrase that the beatings will continue until the morale improves? I had a client tell me that one time, and he said, I was confused for a long, long time, thinking that I needed to beat myself up into improving my approach, into improving my ability to overcome this problem. But he learned that's just not how it works. You can't beat yourself up into peace. You can't beat yourself up into feeling confident. It just doesn't happen. So when you talk to yourself more gently, it allows you to take responsibility more fully, because it allows you to then address the problem directly instead of just feeling awful and then isolating and not doing anything about it. So one of the questions here, how do I reconcile this no fault view of myself with the evangelical view of sexual sin? I think it's a great question. I think the principle is the same. If you engage in sexual sin, I think many people will then equate that with I'm a bad person. The key is to separate yourself, your worth, your identity from your sin, from your decision. So engaging in sexual sin is, yes, is out of alignment with your values, and it's out of alignment with your belief in God. And if you know that God doesn't condone sexual sin and then you participate in it, that's where shame starts to get paired with that. It must be because I'm bad. How you work with that is to recognize that you engaging in a sin doesn't define you as a bad person. It doesn't have anything to do with your worth. God loves us independent of the decisions that we make. We still need to take responsibility for this and develop the right tools to end the behavior. But because I make a mistake doesn't mean that I'm a bad person. It just means I need to dial this in and make sure that I'm working through this. And Spirit, you can get strength from God. You can get strength from prayer to help you navigate this, and clarity and inspiration to know how to deal with this. But it doesn't have to mean anything about who you are as a person, as much as it's a reflection of the tools and skills and the approach that you might just not have yet. I hope that resonates. Let me know if you have any follow-ups on that. That's a really good question. Okay, as you're chatting that, I'm going to move on to the next one. The next tier, we've covered the belief level. The next tier above that is the emotional level. So emotionally, there's any number of negative or uncomfortable emotions that you might experience: sadness, loneliness, fear, anxiety, stress, overwhelm. These uncomfortable feelings are often a source of why if I feel anything negative, then I want to get away from that feeling. And if pornography use has been your way to do that, this is where that on this level, this is at the root of why this happens. So let's say that there's a breakdown, a few examples that I've listed here. Let's say there is a breakdown in your sexual intimacy with your spouse, and you feel sadness, and you feel loss, and you lack a connection with her in that area. Let's say you feel left out and alone, and there's friends that maybe don't text you or call you, or people at work that you want to fit in with, but just maybe don't. Or if you feel like you're kind of on your own, you don't have a lot of friends. Loneliness is a result of that, and that hurts. Or if it's discouragement that your marriage is struggling and you don't know how to fix it. And because of that, you feel discouraged and hopeless, and no matter what you've done, it just hasn't worked. So what do you do with this? One of the most effective ways to start to navigate these situations, or rather these feelings, is to share them. This is the third tool that I want to go over today. When you share how you feel, it changes something inside of you, whether you're sharing with your wife, whether you're sharing with your friends or other people. It can be people at church, mentors, coaches, therapists, group, it could be anybody. When you share, something happens on the inside of you. And so I want to describe for you briefly this idea of what a secure attachment is. Secure attachment is this connection that we have with somebody else where there's safety, where there's closeness, where there's acceptance. And when we have a level of connection with somebody that's close to us, that's what a secure attachment is. It's a bond between you and somebody else. Many people lack a secure attachment, and they don't feel like they can be vulnerable with other people. They don't feel like they can open up, or maybe they just never have. And that was never modeled when they were growing up. And they don't even know what that looks like. And they don't have the tools to do that. Therefore, their attachment, their level of security in a relationship isn't that high. Because it's not a binary secure attachment, insecure attachment. It's more like a spectrum. So let's say you feel like you have more of an insecure attachment with somebody and you don't have that level of closeness and there's not a foundation of safety. There's a fascinating study that was done out of the University of Virginia where they took these groups of people to the bottom of a hill. And at the bottom of the hill, they had the first group of people stand alone, one by one. And they had them rate, how steep do you think the hill is? And then they gave them some ways to describe steepness, or it was the height, right? How high or how steep was this hill? And they wrote down their guesses. And then they took the next group of people and they put them in pairs and they put them side by side and said, I want you guys to rate how high, how steep is that hill? And what was so fascinating is that the group of people who stood in pairs rated the hill as less steep and less tall than the group who was standing there just by themselves. So what they discovered was our brain literally processes information differently based on our level of connection. If you are alone and you're navigating through life alone, yes, you can be married and feel alone. You can have a family and feel alone. If you feel disconnected and you don't have a secure attachment with the people who are closest to you, you will literally process your life and your experiences very differently than if you had a secure attachment and somebody to deal with life together. So, this is why this simple tool of expressing how you feel and letting people in and sharing how you're feeling with other people, this is why this is so critical. Because just by virtue of telling somebody else how you feel, you start to form a connection. And when you share your pain, it softens, it decreases. And there's so many other good research studies that demonstrate that our brain experiences the world differently. We have more confidence, we feel more optimistic and hopeful, we feel more resourceful so we can solve problems when we know we're not alone. That's just how we work. And so knowing that allows you a door to open for you to cultivate that. Because if you don't have that in your life right now, the answer isn't to just get good at operating alone. It's to cultivate a relationship by getting the right tools to know how to do this with somebody that you care about so you don't have to do life alone. Because as a result of being together with somebody else, all of the heavy emotions that we just talked about, sadness, loneliness, anxiety, fear, those things decrease. And then we become much more resourceful so we can then deal with the situation. Like I mentioned, these examples, a sexual intimacy breakdown. Yes, that's tough. Feeling left out, tough. Marriage struggling. All of those are hard things. But when you start to open up and share and express how this feels for you, and then start to work together to figure out, well, how do we solve the blocks that get in the way of us having a better relationship together? How do we solve the blocks that we've been experiencing in our marriage so we can repair the damage from the past, so we can have a deeper connection with each other? This is all possible, especially once you open up and share, because it unlocks something inside of our brain so as to help us process our experiences differently. So this is such an important thing that I would encourage each of you to either, if you don't know how to do this, that would be your next step. Is to figure out, okay, what tools do I need based on what I have? What am I missing that'll help me develop this kind of a relationship? Start to open up, start to share, and that's how you can start to build that connection with and ideally, if you're working through this and you're wanting to repair your marriage, ideally it starts with your wife. And when you cultivate that skill set with her, then you're doing two birds for one stone. You're better dealing with how you feel and addressing the root cause for you, and you're strengthening your relationship in a way that's just not possible if you simply just work on your own. Because both threads exist. You getting into a better place personally doesn't help heal the sadness that your wife feels. And that's one of the elements that can be addressed as you learn the skills to communicate. Okay, let's go on to the next tool here. Tool number 4. This is on the habit level. We've covered beliefs, we've covered emotions, now we're talking about habits. And there are lots of other tools on top of these things. And obviously, if this is just a shorter, 1-hour workshop, I'm not going to be able to go into as much depth, but I wanted to give you the highlights. And so I want to move to the habit level here. Let's say you have a habit of mindlessly scrolling. Here is the antidote to that. if it's just on the habit level, and this is why it's so important to accurately diagnose what the problem is. Because if you think it's a habit level problem, but really it's a belief level problem, you're going to stall out in your progress. And again, to link this to the tool that I was just sharing with you earlier, the goal isn't to beat yourself up. If you stall and you fall back into the old habits and the old patterns, it's not self judgment, shame, criticism. You use that as feedback. You separate yourself from the situation and then work on trying to identify, what did I miss? What strategy do I need to implement? What tool do I need to focus on? Where is this coming from? So that then I discover that to then figure out what tool to apply. So if you're mindlessly scrolling, the first thing that I encourage people to do is ask, what's driving this? Where is this coming from? Is it habit? Is it a desire to escape how you feel? And depending on what it is, will dictate what to do next. So let's say, yeah, it's just a habit. I wasn't feeling depressed. I wasn't feeling overwhelmed. It was just, I was laying in bed. My phone was there. I picked it up, started to scroll. So identifying, when does this happen? And then the antidote, the countermeasure, is clarity. If it's mindless scrolling, that means you're on autopilot. So what do we need to do? It's clarity and intention. So if you start to recognize this is a pattern, I just pick up my phone during downtime and I start scrolling, the next thing I would encourage you to ask yourself is, what would you like to be doing instead? If this wasn't even an issue for you, let's say you're home alone, and in the past, that has been associated with searching for something on your phone. If outside of the moment you create a plan and think to yourself, okay, if I'm home alone at some point this next week, or my wife is going out of town this weekend, what would I want to do with my time? If I had a block of uninterrupted 2 hours or a weekend, what would I want to do? Another question to ask yourself is, what would fulfill me? When you ask yourself those kinds of questions, your brain will start to come up with different answers. If you ask it, why does this keep happening? What's wrong with me? How do I not slip up this weekend? Those are so different than what would fulfill me and excite me and motivate me if I had a block of 2 hours of uninterrupted time where I was all by myself. What would I want to do? Once you can ask yourself that question, you can get yourself some clarity. And then you think, okay, well, if I had 2 uninterrupted hours and I did the thing that would fulfill me the most, that would bring me joy, maybe I would pick up the guitar. Maybe I would read this book that I've been delaying. Maybe I would watch this movie that I've really, really wanted to see. Or I would go out on a walk. I would go to lunch with a friend. There are so many things that you can do that can help you start to re-imprint and reassociate downtime with something that's so much more productive and fulfilling. The goal is not to just fill your time so you don't mess up. It's to create the kind of life that you want to live, that you'd prefer to live. And that cannot happen by accident. It happens intentionally. So having clarity about what you'd like to do, visualizing yourself doing that. So let's say it's at night and you know that a trouble area is when your wife is asleep and you crawl into bed and she's asleep and you have your phone. Visualizing, what would you rather do instead? But watch, like Michael Phelps, I remember hearing or reading in a habit book, that he visualizes every stroke of the race before he even enters the arena. He has won the race countless times in his head before he even dips his toe into the pool. It's visualization. Athletes, performers, actors, they visualize. And when you use that tool, you can apply the same principle, which is, okay, at night, instead of me crawling into bed and grabbing my phone, I'm going to get into bed, pick up my book, I'm going to have it right by my nightstand, and I'm going to do that. And then you watch yourself do it in your mind's eye. You're at lunchtime eating your food, and you think about, okay, tonight, 9 o'clock rolls around, I'm jumping into bed, and I can't wait to read the book. Just by doing that, having clarity, visualizing allows you to execute so much easier and take action on the new routine that you're developing, which ultimately helps you to re-imprint the habits. Okay, the last thought that I want to share, and then we're going to open this up to Q&A in just a couple of minutes here. So if you have questions, get those ready. I want to make sure that this is applicable to you so that you know how you can start to implement these tools. Okay, so I have this analogy. Imagine being camping. And when you're camping, you're supposed to put the fire out. And if you don't, you shouldn't go to bed. And I'm not a big camper, but that's what my friends tell me who do camping. It's like you shouldn't go to bed until the fire is extinguished. This is the same thing when it comes to this problem. If pornography use, the root cause of it has not been dealt with, and there are these embers, and you try to just kind of fan the smoke away, the goal isn't to just linger around the campsite thinking, okay, well, what if I am at the grocery store and I see somebody and it triggers me, and then ultimately it leads me to acting out? Well, maybe I just won't go to the grocery store then. Or what if these situations at home, these negative feelings, or when I'm hard on myself, it leads me to do this thing. Okay, well, I'll just hunker down and hide from all this stuff. That's not how we want to approach this. The tool that I want to emphasize right now, the fifth tool, is healthy living behaviors. It goes along the same lines of what we were talking about when with this previous one of mindless scrolling. It's intentional. It's living with purpose, finding fulfillment, developing connections. So these healthy habits, it's the idea that I want to convey with you right now is these healthy habits are best used when they are anchored to the kind of life that you want to live, instead of in place to help you not slip up. This is what I mean by this. If I journal, if I meditate, if I exercise, do push-ups, call a friend, do all this stuff, if my purpose in doing those things is so I don't slip, I'm going to be home alone this weekend, so I'm going to call my friend as an accountability partner so I don't mess up. You're centering your life around the problem. So in other words, let me go back to this campfire analogy. So let's say you have this, like, these embers that are kind of glowing. It's the same thing as saying, okay, I'm going to start to pour water on the embers here, little drips at a time, in hopes of staving this off so I don't mess up. I'm going to call a friend so I don't mess up. I'm going to journal so I don't mess up. Rather than taking that same water and pouring it on the garden of the life that you want to create. Because if you're just trying to deal with the embers all day, then you're at the campsite and you're just circling around, just kind of paying attention to and being hyper vigilant against, well, I hope this fire doesn't flare up. I hope that I can manage the fire and put it out enough so it doesn't spill outside of the campfire and start to blaze down the whole forest around me. The idea is that if you center your life around the problem, it is going to prevent you from living the kind of life that you want to live. So this is why I wanted to share this tool last, because if you deal with the root cause, it's the same thing as taking a couple of buckets of dirt and burying the fire so that the embers go out. That's our goal here. It's to eliminate and resolve completely the root cause, so that this doesn't have to linger in the back of your mind. So that you don't have to be hyper vigilant around the next time you're going to get triggered or the next time that you're alone. We want to extinguish the fire. And instead of taking the little drips of water to try to manage the fire, we convert our attention and our energy to developing this garden of a life that we want to live. Like I said, journaling, exercise, connecting with people, calling friends, all of those are good things. But my encouragement is for you to link that to the benefits that will provide. Journaling for clarity, meditation for peace, calling a friend for connection. When you link these healthy behaviors to the benefit, then you're creating the life that you want to live. It's then like, okay, I can leave the campfire. I don't have to circle around this fire and stay on my campsite. I can go out and hike. I can enjoy my day. I can feel normal knowing the fire is taken care of. Now I can build the kind of life that I want. And that is this fifth tool, is implementing these healthy living behaviors and linking them to the kind of life that you want to live. I hope that resonates with you. Let me know if you have any follow-ups on that. Super, super important. Now, I want to share with you a couple of ideas here as we transition into the Q&A. If all this resonates with you and you're struggling and I remember hearing this phrase, it's really hard to see the label from inside of the jar. And this is one of the reasons why I like to hire coaches and mentors. And when people work with me, I have eyes to see things, just as coaches that I hire have eyes to see things that I just can't. In fact, I hired somebody just last week to help me with some of the stuff that I'm working on related to trying to grow my podcast. I want more people to find out about the podcast, and I don't have the tools. And so instead of me trying to figure out, well, how do I just like push this out, and how do I help invite people to listen to this more? I genuinely share the podcast with tools and tactical things that I genuinely believe will help. So I want more people to hear this. And so I hired somebody, and it's been after just a couple of calls. Call number 1, now I have clarity. Now I know what to do. If you feel like you want some help, I would love to support you in any way that I can. If you want to work with somebody who has eyes on the outside to help you, just to guide you through this process, then you're more than welcome to book a free call. You can go to the website there. It's stopporn.info. And we can hop on a call and I can see if I can help. And if I can, I'd love to. If I can't, I'll point you in the right direction. But if you're looking for somebody to help you navigate this situation and apply these tools for you specifically, I'd love to do that. No pressure at all. I know that sometimes after the workshops, people think like, I just want some help doing this. So just for anybody who's interested, you can find that information there. If not, all of what I shared with you are the core elements of what I will work with and do with people. The only benefit, the only difference is that I'm doing this with them. So it's customized, you do it quicker. And the goal of all this is to lose the urges. So for anybody who's interested, please feel free to check it out. If you're not, please apply the tools that I've shared today. They are the highlights of what can really make a big difference for you. So I want to go into these questions here. You might be listening to me say this. All this is possible. You can overcome these urges. Yes, this can be a problem that resolves. And you might be thinking, yeah, but I've tried so many times to quit. How do I know that this will actually work? I'm afraid of getting excited and feeling hope that this could be different this time, because the last time I felt excitement, it didn't work. My response to that is that most of the time, if you've tried a bunch of times over a period of years and you haven't been able to quit, it's likely because you haven't found the root cause and have applied the right tools for the right level, as we've talked about today. You might have been applying habit level tools to solve belief level problems. It just won't work. And so most people say, I've tried so many times. What they really are saying is, I've tried one or two things a lot of different times. I've tried the same approach a bunch of times and it hasn't worked. So instead of trying it more and trying harder, the goal is to just do it differently. That's why I wanted to share with you today how you can approach this differently, because doing more of the same with more intensity just isn't going to work. Next is, yeah, this all sounds great, but I'm scared of how life will be without porn. It's familiar. It's been my main coping mechanism as long as I can remember. I understand that. And most of the time when people feel this, it's actually uncertainty that they feel. And while, yes, there might be some fear of like, it's the unknown, it's largely uncertainty. And so one thing that I like to share with people is, if you're on a plane and the engines go out, let's say, I don't know, you're on a plane and there's a fighter pilot who shoots one of the wings off. You have absolute certainty that that plane is going to crash into the ground and everybody on board is not going to make it. For people who think to themselves, I don't know what life is going to be like without porn. I'm scared. It's unfamiliar. I'm uncertain. There is much more certainty that with porn in your life, you will be more unhappy than you would be without it. Because if that wasn't true, you probably wouldn't be watching this workshop. If that wasn't true, you wouldn't think this was actually a problem. You know this is an issue in your life. You know that this has been a struggle. So you can tell with absolute certainty that This is going to be a problem in your life from here on out until it's solved. So the uncertainty that you feel of how life will be without it, I hope as you hear me describe it in this way, can outweigh the lack of certainty that you have about what life will be like. So that's number one. Point number two, I would encourage you to take what you've learned today and start to build. Start to build new tools and resources and skills and relationships so that it doesn't feel like it's as big of a jump. Start to incorporate these other coping mechanisms. You don't have to go from I have nothing, I have porn, to I have nothing now and I'm in a free fall. Focus on implementing and building all of these things that we've talked about today so that the gap narrows. Instead of this huge canyon of like, I've got this thing that's destroying my relationship and it's affecting my life. But then if I jump off, I'm jumping into the abyss. Create a safety net for yourself so that the jump is much more manageable and less scary. Lastly, but this all sounds good. There are unresolved issues from my past that could be the source of my behavior. I do a deep dive in this in my podcast, episode 149. If you want to check that out, I wanted to just kind of list that here. I want to give you the highlights for it, the answer to this. But if you're interested in going a little deeper, you can listen to that episode here. The highlight is that when we experience trauma when we're younger, the trauma that we carry around from that are the beliefs that they create about ourselves. When somebody's parents are, let's say, abusive, or they neglect them, or they're abused by somebody else, a friend or a neighbor or some stranger, or they're rejected and isolated and they didn't have a friend group. The result of these painful experiences that we go through are often beliefs about ourselves. And so the good news is that we don't need to go into the past and rewrite history. All we need to do is work with the current effect that those old situations created. And so if the belief that was created from an early childhood trauma was I'm unworthy, now we know what we can work with. It's just re-imprinting, breaking the belief, creating a new belief, anchoring that in so you actually believe it and feel it. And when you do that, that is how you resolve childhood trauma. It's not going back into the past and rewriting it, because obviously we can't. But the good news is we don't have to. It's just working with the impact. It's no different. Let's say you're going to do a car wreck when you're young and your arm doesn't heal properly. All we want to do, if it's 20 years later, is realign and reset the arm. We don't have to go back and make sure that the drunk driver who hit you is in jail. We don't have to make sure that that person says they're sorry and does all this stuff. It's that today my arm is it's not set right. So we need to go in and do some surgery to realign it. That solves the problem. It's no different with this. So, this is, okay, I added one more here. Okay, this is, I think, another one that a lot of guys struggle with. If I give up pornography, then it feels like I'm giving up my sexual pleasure. Okay, so this is a key one. Giving up pornography does not mean you're giving up sexual pleasure. It means you're giving up the counterfeit version of it. Sexual pleasure is wired within us, and the drive for that is there for a purpose. And one of the reasons for that, yes, of course, it's procreation fundamentally. But when it relates to our relationships, our romantic relationships, our marriages, our sexual desire and arousal can facilitate connection and closeness and bonding with our spouse in a way that few other things can. And so we're just giving up, when we give up porn, we're giving up the counterfeit version of that, the one-dimensional version that doesn't fulfill us, that doesn't build any type of connection. In fact, it erodes connection. And so the goal is to eliminate that. And when you do eliminate that, no porn in your life enhances your capacity for intimacy. So if you're then thinking, well, I don't have that as an option. My relationship with my wife has totally broken down. She doesn't trust me. Her wall is up. She doesn't want any intimacy. Now what? then the goal is, again, if that's the root of the problem in your relationship, if that's the root cause of why she doesn't want to be intimate, it's because the wall is up because she's hurt. Now we know what to solve for. So thinking about things with the root cause helps in the relationship too. So if the intimacy is not where you want it and there's a breakdown there, it's because something caused that breakdown. So the antidote to that is repair work, healing conversations, rebuilding trust, and creating safety. When you do that, the energy in the relationship changes and the intimacy has a space to get cultivated again. Until you do that, the walls remain in the relationship. And yes, if there's a breakdown there, it's still, of course, it hurts and it's discouraging. But the goal isn't to just resign yourself to say, well, my wife doesn't really want to do that, so I have no other outlet. No, we have to own that and say, okay, there are things that I can do to repair and cultivate that with her. And by so doing, I can actually experience sexuality in a much more fulfilling way so that we can build our relationship and it helps us to foster even more closeness. All of what we've talked about today, on top of you personally growing, this information can help your wife foster, or rather, addressing the root cause can help foster trust back in your relationship. If your wife doesn't know why this has happened, she doesn't understand what the root cause is, it's very difficult for her to trust you. It's very difficult for her to feel safety because the other shoe's just going to drop because she doesn't know why it happened in the first place. So, taking all of what we've covered today, my encouragement for you, and then we're going to jump into Q&A. My encouragement for you is to map this out and use the framework, belief, feeling, habit, and identify where are the roots of this for you. And then based on what we've talked about, applying one of these tools and taking action on this, and then telling your wife what you learned, sharing with her what you learned about your root cause and what you're going to do about it. When she hears you communicate that to her and you have clarity about where this comes from for you, and then you know what to do about it, that will help her find a degree of trust in you when you start to follow through on that. If after today you still have questions, again, I would love to help support you. If you feel like you'd rather just have a guide and move through this quickly, there's an option for that. If this resonates and you have the tools that you need, please apply these and integrate them into your life and into your relationship. My hope is that you've learned a lot today. Let me know in the chat if this has been helpful for you. And we're going to jump into questions, but again, my goal for this my hope is that you can have some more clarity to know how to deal with this, approaching it not from the traditional way, but from the root cause resolution way, which ultimately makes it so you can be completely free from this. So again, let me know in the chat, has this been helpful? As I go through the questions here, I think these are some really good questions that I've seen come in. Okay. All right, let me show this on this. I think I should show this here. Okay, perfect. Question. My root cause was sexual abuse from a grandparent and my parents are toxic. How do I manage them or cut them because they don't believe me that it happened 30 years ago and they keep saying that I was lying? Okay, really good question. Let's make this applicable to you. In fact, what I was just touching on at the very end, I think applies to this. The good news is that you don't have to go back into the past and rewrite that abuse from your grandparents. My guess is that created beliefs in you or patterns that formed as a result of you needing to cope with that. So I go deeper again in the episode right there, 149. I think that could be helpful. I would encourage you to take a listen to that. But just to highlight and give you some direction specifically for this, I would work on identifying what belief this created in you, whether it's a sense of shame or unworthiness or inadequacy or feeling flawed and defective. That would be where you would want to do the work. And you can start to take yourself out of the situation. Tool number one that we talked about today, depersonalizing this, and recognize that abuse is never the fault of the victim. It wasn't because you're a bad kid and maybe you started to feel unworthy afterwards, but separate yourself from their choices, their awful decisions to do this is how you can start to separate and break those beliefs. Now, if your parents are toxic, then yes, I think boundaries are going to be a really, really helpful thing. So what does that look like? Well, you put a boundary up around the thing that causes you pain. If, let's say, conversations with them are never productive, you first address that with them and say, when we talk about these things, this is what affects me. When you approach it in this way, this is how it affects me. You share with them what the problem is. Share with them the situation that's bothering you. If they then understand what's affecting you and are willing to change, great. Boundaries are kind of like this thing that you put in place. Here's how boundaries are there. You're communicating, this doesn't work for me. This type of conversation doesn't fit. Or when you come over to my house and this is how, this is what happens. This doesn't work for me. There's a clear boundary, clear expectation. This is how I would like things to be instead. Can we work towards that? If they say yes, awesome. If they say no, and they blame you for whatever it is, or if they don't believe you and they think that you're lying still, that's when, if you've addressed this is how you'd like it to be and they don't adhere to that or honor that, then boundaries are in place to protect you. So that might mean more distance. That might mean less conversations with them. But it's you putting yourself in a position where you feel safe. You can't make them do anything, as you know. You can't make them believe you. You can't make them have certain conversations with you. So if they don't, then it's a matter of you making the decision to respond in a way that will keep you safe. Hopefully that helps. Let me know if you have any follow-ups on that. Okay, next question. Gavin, okay. When journaling and thinking about my root causes, do you have any tips or topics on how I can explore this with myself? Okay, yes, great question. That would be the framework that I mentioned. Let me pull that back up on the slides. It's this framework. Oh, shoot, I passed it. Let me know, Gavin, if you have follow-ups on this. If after this, just to see if this resonates, because maybe I can create something to help you based on what your question is. So this is the framework. When you start to look in these places, again, like imagine you're a mechanic and a car has a problem and it comes into the shop and you're a brand new mechanic and you start to learn, oh, there's only 3 areas that problems exist. It's the engine block, it's the wiring, and it's the, I don't know, again, I'm not a car guy, but you know what I mean. It's the brakes, it's the axle. Okay. Problems only exist on 3 levels. Once you know that, you can systematically go through and think, okay, engine block. I'm looking, are the wires connected here? Do the pistons work? Does the oil pump where it should? Is the radiator fine? Whatever that looks like in an engine. It's the same thing. Beliefs. Am I being hard on myself? When a negative situation comes up, how do I talk to myself? When things break down in my marriage, do I take this as a personal attack? If my wife shares with me her pain, do I go into my shame? Or do I not go there, but I just kind of feel sad? Or do I feel like I'm in a really good place personally, but I have some habits that I need to re-imprint? I think when you look at it through this frame, that's ultimately how you can find the solution, or rather the problem, so you can then pair the solution to that problem. Let me know if that helps, Gavin. I'm happy to go deeper with that, depending on how you understand this. All right. Next question. Okay, sorry if my English isn't very good. Glad to have you here, coming in from wherever you're coming in. Here's my question. You talked about the possibility of root causes being feelings of depression, anxiety, sadness, and loneliness. Is it possible that it could be? Yes, definitely. Oh, no, there's the second part of the question. Is it possible that it could be related to horniness or arousal, or does arousal just happen because it's been wired to feel that way after the root cause? What a great question. Okay. It could happen on a result of either of these things. Arousal by itself is a normal physical response. That is not a bad thing. So I think I'm really glad that you're separating these two things out. When I think about arousal, I would put it more under the habit category, though it's maybe not even a habit. I would just maybe put it as just a normal physiological drive. And so let's say we all have kind of a clock, a time clock, where the body produces those feelings. So for some people, it's, whatever, it's a day, few days, week, few weeks, month, whatever it is. The cadence doesn't matter. But when your body starts to produce those feelings, and if it's related just to the physiological arousal, yes, that definitely happens. And if you have used pornography as a way to deal with that, as a habit to deal with, or as an outlet to navigate those feelings, to channel those feelings towards, then that would be the habit level. If that's the habit, then it's a matter of developing that in a way that is in alignment with your values. So if you're married, that would be in your relationship. And so, yes, physical arousal, there's nothing wrong with that. But if you use that as the catalyst to then search for something, I would put that under the habit level. And this is where I would encourage you to just do an assessment. If you feel arousal, you can reflect, just do a physical, like literally take 30 seconds and think to yourself, what's this coming from? Sometimes it's a visual cue. Let's say you're just sitting there watching TV and you see somebody attractive on the screen. That might trigger this like feeling of desire, because we are visual creatures as human beings. That doesn't mean that this old pattern is creeping up back again. It's just you see somebody, triggers a physical response. Now from here, you have to decide, how do I deal with this? Do I apply one of these tools and just let this feeling, it's just mindfulness. It's just being aware that that feeling is there. Yes, maybe there's a person who's attractive, but I don't have to do anything with this. I can just let this feeling come and go. And I don't need to entertain this. I don't need to dwell on this. It's just, I can relax knowing it's a physical desire, and I don't need to act on this in a way that betrays my values. Or if you notice feeling desire and arousal, but then you scan and think, I am actually just feeling stressed and I just want to escape how I feel, then again, that reveals what step to take. So whatever the root of it is, this is again my hope as you're listening to the workshop, whatever the root of it is indicates what to do. It's not throwing spaghetti at the wall. Oh, I feel arousal, so I need to do push-ups. That's going to miss 9 times out of 10, because what if it has nothing to do with your physical arousal? Doesn't reflect that you need to do muscle conditioning, right? That's just a distraction. And that's what I was saying earlier. It's like pouring water on the embers, hoping, okay, I hope I can manage these embers so it doesn't flare up and cause me to go back. It misses when you don't know why you feel the way that you do. So that's why I wanted to give you this framework, so you can look through it to assess what's causing this, so that then you can apply the right tool for the right situation. Okay, Gavin. Okay, good question here. Will you do a workshop that's more aimed at betrayal trauma for the spouse? I'd be more than happy to do something like that. So that's one of the ones that I can put on the doc. So anybody who's in the group, I want to give you what you need. And so doing workshops, doing trainings, doing Q&As, it's all designed to help give you the support that you need. I cover a lot of stuff in the betrayal trauma, in that category in the trust rebuilding workshop. A lot of those things are applicable when it comes to betrayal trauma. Actually, in fact, most of them are. So in the meantime, I would just refer you back to that. If you don't know where that is, just make a comment in the group and I'm happy to point it to you. But yes, I think I think this is a really helpful thing to have in place. It's just knowing what to do to help your wife. But again, there's a bunch of tools in the trust workshop. Okay, another question here, Gavin. I believe that the root cause for me could be because my mom would show me love constantly until I would fail or do something she disapproved of. Then that led me to lie and withhold. Yeah, I think that's a great insight. So yeah, so if I was working with you, here's some of the questions I would ask you, and you can answer them here if you'd like. I would ask and wonder when if she would withhold love, what message did that send to you? What, again, using this 3-pillar framework here, what belief did that create in you if you failed and then lost her love? I think the lying and withholding is a response to the underlying fear. It's the core fear that we're trying to uncover. And that fear could be, I'm not enough. If I make mistakes, I won't be loved. Love is conditional. Those are the kinds of beliefs that a lot of the guys that I work with who describe the same thing, those are the kinds of beliefs that they develop. That their worth is based on performance. It's some variation of that. That, I think, is a core issue that drives people's behavior, right? Lying and withholding makes perfect sense to me why you do that, especially as a kid. Because as a kid, we depend on our parents' love. So if our mistakes means that love goes away, of course you're going to lie. It doesn't mean you're a bad person. Again, you can apply multiple tools, even in this small example here. Self-compassion, separating yourself, right? So if your wife is hurt by your lies and then she gets mad at you, and then you think to yourself, I'm just a bad person. Bad people lie. Bad people hide stuff. And I keep doing this. I must be bad. It's a lot more nuanced than that. It doesn't have anything to do with you being a bad person. It's a reflection of what you learned. It's a survival instinct. It's a protection instinct. And so I've worked with lots of guys similarly who say, I've lied my whole life because when I've lied, I avoid punishment. When I lie, when I was younger, I didn't get abused. I got approval. So of course they learn lying is a protective mechanism. Now, that serves them when they're a kid, but then when they get married, they outgrow that strategy. Lying undercuts the relationship, especially in a marriage. And so, yeah, I think that's that is at the core of that. So lying, again, this is where you can apply these tools. It's not that you're a bad person. It's you're lying because you're trying to protect yourself. And if the belief that you're trying to, if what you're trying to protect is your sense of self, your self-worth, feeling enough, feeling worthy and loved, that's where we do the work. It's building self-esteem, finding it's developing an ability to feel loved, fostering relationships where you can experience love, releasing these old beliefs. That's where the work takes place. And that's where the breakthroughs happen. There's so much leverage with those particular beliefs. Well, like I said earlier, beliefs, man, that's like 80% of the work for so many people. There's still a lot of good things you can do on these other levels, but beliefs and emotions, that's like 80, 90% of the work. So that's where I would encourage you to do the work. It looks like you are responding here. I would feel like I wasn't enough. Yep. I had to fight for her attention. Okay, hopefully that resonates, Gavin. And you'd want to avoid punishment. Of course, right? That's perfectly natural. And so really going easy on yourself and recognizing that belief of not being enough, that's where the win, that's where the leverage is. Breaking the belief, using the tools that we've talked about today, you can truly have this like, for me, it was like okay, so yeah, like there's a couple of different ways this happens for people. For some people, it's this like chiropractic moment. The adjustment happens, this like belief shifts, and it's like, I had no idea that I just misunderstood this for so long. And then what happens is we just have to reinforce it. It's like you go to the chiropractor, there's a light bulb moment. It's like, this is amazing. But then 2 days later, your back kind of hurts again. How this process works, we have to have a tool to break the belief, and then lots of reinforcement, just like stretching would be on your back. You stretch, you exercise, you do that whole thing, then your back realigns. It's the same thing with this. Breaking the belief, then you put a new belief in place, reinforce and dial that in so that is airtight. That's how you re-imprint those beliefs in most cases. Okay. Looks like there's one more question. If there's any other questions, please drop those in the chat. I hope this is helpful to get this personalized help. Alan, all right. Good question here. Sam, doesn't physical exercise replicate or replace some of the brain responses experienced during pornography use? On some level, yes, because exercise releases dopamine. But this is what I was referring to. If the problem is what Gavin was talking about, and he has a belief of not being enough, push-ups as the solution doesn't address that belief. So push-ups is not the right tool to deal with the problem. Is push-ups a great tool? For sure. Can push-ups be a helpful tool if the root of the problem is on the habit level? For sure. Because let's say your habit is you get home from work, you sit on the couch, pull out your phone, scroll, and then it's like, oh, how did I end up here? What was I doing? If all that is driving that is just habit, it's like you sit on the couch and you pick up your phone. Putting push-ups in place as a replacement for that is a great idea. It could be anything: push-ups, journaling, doing something productive, doing something fun, going out with friends. It's just intention. But most of the time, the problem isn't the core of the problem, I'll say, is beneath the habit level. While yes, a part of it is the habit, but what is driving that usually is related to something deeper. So hopefully that helps. It's just a matter of pairing the right strategy, right? Again, because if the problem is I don't believe that I'm good enough, dopamine distracts me from that. It doesn't solve that. So that's why I think it's so key to pair the right solution with the right issue, because we're not going for a distraction, even if it's a healthy distraction. Even if it's a healthy distraction, we want to find closure instead of just like pushing away the urge. So hopefully that was helpful. It's a good question, Alan. All right. It looks like there are no other questions. So my final thought is a bit of encouragement. Hope. Number one, this is 1000% possible for you guys to do. Oh, we got one more question. Raphael. Can a person have all or parts of these three categories, some or the others? Yes. Most of the time, it's yes. Most of the time, it's something in one of these categories. It's usually all of them. Sometimes it's one of them. Sometimes it's not. But yes, it can be a variation of one or all. And if that's the case, it's the same process. It's just going through systematically. Here's belief level. Let's target those. Here are the tools to address that. Emotional level. Here are the tools to do that. Habit level. You're pairing them together to help you resolve each of those. And when you knock all these down and plug all the holes, that's when you have freedom. So this rolls into what I was just about to say, which is it is 1000% possible for you guys to overcome this. My confidence in this is unshakable. I've seen it happen too many times. I've just seen people leave this behind them without urges, without struggle, without hypervigilance. This can truly be an issue that you can leave in the past when you resolve the root cause. And it can happen. Freedom can happen in no other way. It's just a matter of solving why the porn use is there in the first place. It's a symptom, just like we talked about. So my encouragement is that you guys take some time this week and use this framework here to identify on what level does this exist for you. If on all of them, identify all of them, and then pick one tool and start to chip away. Start to address this not with more intensity using the same old tools, but in a new way. The final analogy that I like to share that sometimes I tell people that I'm working with is imagine being a fly and you're trying to get outside and you see a window and you fly over to the window and you just knock into the glass. And then you think to yourself, I just need to fly faster. You back up and slam into the glass again. It's like, I'm not flying fast enough. I'm not putting enough effort. If you keep tackling that problem of trying to get outside with the same strategy that hasn't been working, it's not going to work. It's a matter of doing it differently. And it's when you approach it with the right tool on the right level, this process feels comparatively, it's like a walk in the park. It is easier and less effort to approach it in a way that actually works than it does to do something that doesn't work. So if I'm the fly and I keep slamming into the window, I could try hard all day, all night. But if I simply just turned around and saw that there was a door that was open, I can effortlessly fly through the door outside and solve the problem that I was going for with 1/10 of the effort. The same thing is true with this problem. You don't have to smash into this glass and beat yourself up doing all this work. It's not about doing all this work. It's about just doing the thing that will move the needle. And usually that thing is it can feel almost effortless when you figure out, oh, it's this. Oh, I just need to do this. Pair those together and just do it. It's not frantic, overwhelmed, anxious effort. It's just methodical. Doing this today. This is my focus. Doing this today. It's just chipping away at it with that energy. And again, I hope that you can lean on my confidence, because I know that so many people struggle with this for a long, long time, and they've tried as best as they can. But all we want to do is just approach it differently so that you can find the relief and the freedom that you truly can achieve just by doing the steps that we've laid out here. Thank you guys so much for being here. If you wouldn't mind, drop a comment in the group and let me know, what was your takeaway? I want to make sure that these workshops are hitting the nail on the head. If they're not, please let me know. If they are, please let me know so I can just get feedback. Please drop your takeaway in the group. And I want to inspire people to get the help that they need. So this framework I've just seen help so many times. So I'd love to hear your takeaways. Drop it in the group. And then I'm happy to answer any follow-up questions if you are watching the replay. And I'm looking forward to hearing the steps that you're taking as you do this. Alan, yep, you're welcome. It's a pleasure. I hope this is helpful, and we'll pick it up soon. And I wish you guys the best of luck over the next week. And yeah, love to hear feedback. Thank you so much. Have a great rest of your night. I'll talk to you soon.